She gets into the car and doesn't say anything. Not upset, not distracted, just dim. Like the day already used her up. She's 15. I remember being loud at 15. This was different. We drive a few minutes in silence. Then she says, "Do you ever feel like what you do doesn't really stay?" Not matter, stay. I don't answer right away. I'm 85 years old. I've lived a long, ordinary life, the kind built on responsibility, on doing what made sense, on choosing what was reasonable even when it wasn't exciting. I've seen wars come and go, watched money lose its meaning and find it again, buried people I assumed would always be part of the picture. But that question didn't land like a child's worry. It felt older than her, older than me even, because she wasn't asking whether life turns out well. She was asking whether it leaves a shape behind. And I realized, sitting there at a red light, that I've been asking myself the same thing for longer than I care to admit. I didn't tell her that I've asked myself that same question. I didn't need to. Some things don't need to be shared out loud to be understood. The only difference is where we're standing. She's looking ahead, wondering if there's something missing before it even starts. I'm looking back, realizing how quietly certain parts of me stopped showing up along the way. And somewhere between those two views, something finally came into focus. We talk a lot about being remembered, but that's not really what people are chasing. What they're afraid of is becoming unrecognizable to themselves. Most lives don't fall apart. They narrow, slowly, reasonably, through good decisions, sensible trade-offs, through choosing stability over curiosity, duty over impulse, what works over what once felt alive. No one warns you that this kind of life doesn't break you. It just edits you. I think about a woman who lived a few houses down from us for most of my adult life. Margaret. She was dependable in a way that made her almost invisible. Same routine, same pace, same quiet competence. She taught young children year after year, never spoke about herself much, never asked for attention. When she retired, there was a small gathering, a few familiar faces, polite applause, a sense that something had concluded neatly, not tragically, not dramatically, just closed. When she died a couple of years later, I assumed the room would feel the same. What surprised me wasn't how many people came. It was how many stories arrived with them, and how few of them sounded like the life she appeared to be living from the outside. Mary never talked much about herself. If you asked how she was doing, she'd give you a short answer and turn the question back on you. I thought I understood her because of that. I didn't. The church was full, not politely full. People standing along the walls, sitting on the steps, waiting outside. And what struck me wasn't the number of people, it was the way they spoke. Not grand speeches, not praise. Recognition. One after another, they stood up and talked about moments Mary probably forgot. A sentence she said in passing. A pause where she didn't rush them. A look that told them they weren't stupid when they felt like they were. A grown man said she was the first adult who made him feel capable. A woman said Mary taught her to read when no one else had the patience. Another man brought his daughter and said he chose his work because of a classroom he sat in once, decades ago. Listening to them, I realized something uncomfortable. Mary didn't live loudly, but she lived accurately. She didn't chase meaning, she didn't even name it. She just stayed present in places most people hurry through. And that presence didn't look important while it was happening. It looked small, repeatable, easy to overlook. That's the part we misunderstand. We think significance announces itself, that it feels important while we're inside it. But the moments people carry with them the longest usually felt ordinary to the person creating them. I didn't know that at 39. That year, everything felt thin. Work barely holding together, money slipping through faster than it came in, sleep cut short, nights stretched too long. One evening, I sat in my car outside a bar, engine still running, trying to decide whether I wanted to disappear for an hour or admit I was already halfway there. I wasn't thinking about meaning. I was thinking about relief. That's when someone I barely knew knocked on the window, just stood there, waiting. We'd met only a couple of times before, barely enough to call it knowing someone. He tapped on the glass and asked if I wanted to get coffee. That was it. No concern in his voice, no questions waiting behind the offer, just coffee. We sat in a diner for a long while. He didn't ask what was wrong, didn't try to pull anything out of me. He talked about ordinary things, the kind you don't remember later. Something his son had said, a book he hadn't finished, a place he'd once driven through and never returned to. And somewhere in the middle of all that nothing, something in me slowed down. The noise didn't stop, the worry didn't disappear, but it loosened its grip. I didn't go into the bar that night. I went home. I can't tell you what sentence did it. I can't point to a moment that felt important while it was happening. But that hour changed the direction of my evening. And maybe more than that. I doubt he remembers it at all. That's how these things usually work. What matters rarely arrives with force. It doesn't ask to be noticed. It doesn't leave evidence behind for the person who offered it. You do something that feels minor, almost forgettable, and it lands somewhere deep in someone else's life. Then you move on. My wife Helen used to write letters. Actual letters. Envelopes, stamps, handwriting that took her time. She wrote to our children when they were away, to people she hadn't seen in years, to neighbors, to names that crossed her mind while she was making tea. I used to tease her about it, told her there were easier ways now. She'd smile and keep writing. After she died, I found the boxes. Stacks of replies she'd kept without ever mentioning them. People wrote about those letters like they were something solid, something they'd held on to, read more than once, returned to during long nights. Helen wasn't trying to leave anything behind. She wasn't thinking about impact. She was just reaching outward, the way she always had. And somehow, without intending to, she stayed. There's something I used to believe, without realizing it had settled in me, that a life was supposed to rise above itself, that if it stayed too ordinary for too long, it had somehow failed. No one ever said that to me directly. It just floated in the background, in what was praised, in what was shared, in what people seemed to rush toward. And over time, it makes you look at your own days differently. You start to wonder if simply showing up is enough, if the hours you spend keeping things steady are just filler, if the quiet parts of your life are placeholders for something that never arrives. What I've come to see, too late to call it wisdom maybe, is that most of what keeps a life intact never asks to be noticed. It happens in kitchens before sunrise, in routines no one applauds, in the steady presence that doesn't look impressive from the outside. These aren't moments people collect. They don't feel meaningful while you're inside them. They just feel necessary. And because they feel necessary, we overlook them. We assume they don't count. But when you strip everything back, titles, ambitions, the stories people tell about themselves, what's left is usually very simple. Someone who stayed. Someone who didn't disappear when it would have been easier to. Someone who noticed more than they spoke. I don't think a life proves itself by being visible. I think it reveals itself quietly in who felt steadier because you were there. And the strange part is, you don't usually get to witness that. You live your days, you make reasonable choices, you do what seems right at the time, and only later, sometimes much later, you realize that what felt unremarkable was the shape your life was taking all along. Not loud enough to point to, not dramatic enough to explain, just real. I keep turning my granddaughter's question over in my mind, not because it startled me, because it felt familiar. Does anything I do actually matter? I don't think she was asking about meaning. I think she was asking about scale. Whether a life needs to register somewhere, whether it has to show up in a way that can be pointed to, measured, confirmed. That's the trap. Because once you ask it that way, the answer almost always feels thin. What I've learned, slowly, is that mattering doesn't live in the distance. It lives close. It's not about how far something reaches, it's about whether it would be missed. When my grandson was small, he was afraid of the water. Not nervous, afraid in his body. So for weeks, we stood together at the shallow end of the pool. I didn't try to convince him of anything, didn't rush him forward. We just stood there, day after day, letting the fear soften on its own. He swims now, has for years. I doubt he remembers those afternoons. They weren't memorable in that way. But I do. Because I know how easily that fear could have stayed with him if no one had been willing to be patient where it lingered. That's the kind of thing you don't put your name on. It doesn't feel impressive while it's happening. It just feels present. The older I get, the more the things people chase start to look weightless. Status thins out, achievements lose their edges. Even the moments you're proud of blur faster than you expect. But people remember something else. They remember whether you slowed down with them, whether you noticed when they were carrying more than they said, whether you treated them like they were real. Last week at the grocery store, the young woman at the register looked worn down, the kind of tired that doesn't go away with sleep. I could have paid and moved on. Instead, I asked how she was, and meant it. She hesitated, then told me about her mother, about long shifts, about not knowing how long she could keep it up. We spoke for a few minutes. Nothing poetic, nothing wise, just recognition. When I left, she thanked me more than once. I don't expect that moment to echo very far, but I know it landed. And at this stage of life, I'm beginning to understand something quietly unsettling. Most of what stays behind us doesn't feel important when we're doing it. It just feels human. No, it didn't change the world. But did it matter to her, standing there in that moment? I think it did. And that's where my thinking has slowly shifted, not toward answers, but away from the question itself. Because asking whether a life matters usually means we're measuring it from too far away, from a distance where only big things register, where quiet doesn't show up. But a life isn't lived from a distance, it's lived close. Up close, what stays isn't spectacle, it's steadiness. It's the times you didn't rush past someone, the moments you stayed when it would have been easier not to, the hours you gave without keeping track of them. Most of it doesn't look important while it's happening. It just looks like another ordinary choice in an ordinary day. And maybe that's why we doubt it. I'm 87 now. There isn't much space left for pretending I don't know what I'll miss. When I think about what remains of a life, it isn't the things that once felt impressive. Those fade quickly. Some have already faded. What stays are faces, voices, moments where I was actually there instead of halfway somewhere else. Times I listened without preparing a response. Times I noticed something small and didn't ignore it. Times I didn't need to be seen to stay. That's the strange part. The things that last the longest often felt like nothing special at the time. Just being there, just paying attention, just not turning away. And when I sit with that, really sit with it, I don't feel resolved. I feel quieter. And maybe that's enough. Because a life doesn't have to announce itself to be real. It just has to have been lived where it touched someone else, even briefly.